Hello, everyone. This is a recording of Noahide Essential Principles, lesson number 8. I do apologise. The lesson has been given. However, I inadvertently did not press the record button. So for the benefit of those of you who have not yet seen lesson number 8, I know some of you do come back and watch the recordings. I will go through this lesson again and with the slides so that you can look at it later. So the Noahide Essential Principles, this is lesson number 8, and it's about establishing courts of law and justice systems. Just a quick recap of what we did last week in lesson number 7. We learned about the law called Noahide, which is, of course, not eating the flesh of a still living animal. So we know, most of us know now, that after the flood, Noah was permitted to kill animals for food. And Noahide is the actual 7th Noahide law. So that's where we get the name 7 Noahide laws from. Noahide applies to domestic and wild mammals and birds also. And that prohibition would include things such as causing pain and suffering to any living creature for that matter, mating different species of animals, and grafting different species of fruit trees. So that was the previous lesson. So now we're going to move along into our lesson here, which is establish courts of law and justice. So all of us here would agree that the establishment of laws and courts is well, it's essential, let's put it that way. So law and order is the foundation of peace and social morality. So there is an obligation to set up a judicial system. We want people not to pervert justice. We want to have manners by which people can have mediation and arbitration, and obligation of kindness and mercy. They would be just basic fundamentals, and by no means are they exhaustive. So a Noahide court, which incidentally is not in place at the moment throughout the world, there are no actual what we call Noahide courts yet. So the function of a Noahide court is to teach and instruct people against breaking the 7 Noahide laws. We would be encouraging and instilling community values based on our divine universal commandments, and encourage peaceful and respectful existence throughout our communities and various societies, etc. So the question is, well, where did the beginning of justice systems first crop up? Well, we know the story of Adam, where there was a prohibition of murder and an obligation to establish justice. And we're all familiar probably with this now, chapter and verse, Genesis 9, verses 5 to 6. And again, that was repeated to Noah, that is to judge and punish murderers. So murder is one of course, most grievous of all sins. Why do we need a justice system? Well, it's pretty obvious when we look down this list, isn't it? Law and order, prevention, the old saying, prevention's better than cure. And, of course, our judges, starting with them, they must be of excellent character, of good standing, how shall we say, learned individuals. We are told in a famous verse here, Zechariah, chapter 8, verse 16, and it talks about Abraham. It's God referring to Abraham. But it says that society and nation survives on 3 principles, and that is truth, justice, and peace. That's a phrase throughout history has often been quoted. And here is what it says in Zechariah. You can read that for yourself. And also, I draw your attention to a reference in the Divine Code 3rd edition. There is one, it commences on page 666, and footnote number 8. It's not integral to the how shall I say, quiz that you'll do at the end of all these lessons. But out of a point of interest, you may like to access that and read it. Just shows you the point of views, which are interesting reading. Now, a Noahide court cannot decide a question arising from Torah law. Now, deciding and interpreting Torah law belongs to the area of our learned rabbinical courts and rabbis and sages, and they make those decisions. So a Noahide court, if it were in existence today, which it isn't, they would decide or interpret those laws. However, the Noahide court, if it were so established, could make laws that are morally and logically binding to our area. In fact, I'm using an example here. Most of us know that you slow down to 40 kilometres in the school zones within school hours of when a child would be coming to school or leaving school. Most societies have some sort of warning about that, or you have lollipop ladies, etc. And these are sort of, it's socially, logically and morally correct that we try to preserve our children. So that's an example. Under laws under the jurisdiction of a Noahide court, which is not in place at this point in history, there would be areas such as murder, injury, damages, monetary and business law, theft, rape, kidnapping, and education in relation to the other 6 Noahide laws, and in relation to the state or nation that the courts were established in. Educating our children regarding God's law. Well, this is very important. Genesis chapter 18, verse 19. I'll let you read that. And also there is another reference here to the Divine Code, 3rd edition, page 675 and 676. There are footnotes 37, 38 and 39. Again, these are often the footnotes are just as interesting and intriguing as the actual text of the book. And so please avail yourself of reading those out of interest's sake. Out of interest's sake, it may just be worth your while to read that. Now, a lot of you, just very briefly, may have heard certain comments bandied around about, Noahide laws are terrible. They're going to kill people, cut their heads off. They're going to do all sorts of things. Dear oh me, we can't have that. They're evil. Well, the answer to that is at this time in history, we do not have governments upholding the 7 Noahide laws. We do not have Noahide courts per se in existence. So the ability for Noahide courts to function according to the divine commandment is only applicable when the majority of society's population is God-fearing. I'll leave you to answer that question. So we at this present time do not have Noahide courts operating throughout the world. Although they may have laws implemented that resemble, for instance, some of the Noahide laws, and rightly and thankfully so, like such as murder and theft, etc., it is a secular court. It is a national court, a society court. It is not a Noahide court. So this little bit of information is helpful. So if and when people come, some people might make comments to you and say, the Noahide laws, they're brutal, they're going to cut people's head off, blah, blah, blah. So one of the questions you could say, well, hang on a minute, are there Noahide courts operating in the world today? Do we have a death penalty in Australia or all this? And then you can say, well, in that fact, we don't have Noahide courts in operation, so you've got nothing to worry about at this stage. However, when the majority of world societies are not, they're not God-fearing at the moment, so they're not observant Noahides. So Noahides today are not able to establish Noahide courts or enforce the 7 Noahide laws upon society. That means it is not an empowered court system in the secular world today. And that is what you could just simply say. The Noahide law courts are not an empowered court system today, and all in God's time that will happen. There is predictions of some time or ideas of when this may come into place, but I believe we'll be left in no doubt when that happens. It will be visible. The whole world will become aware of God, and so I'm not terribly worried about what people think is going to happen, because often that never happens. So that is the abridged version of the last number 8 lesson, and I look forward to seeing you all next week for the final lesson, number 9, which will be a summary and conclusion of all that we've done in the last 8 weeks. And there will be a quiz that is purely optional. People can take later on at their own pace if they want to. We'll talk about that as well. Until next week, take care. Thank you for listening, and I will see you all next week.